The 11th session of the Senate, the first regular session of the 19th Congress, is hereby called to order. Senator Visa? Senator Visa. Session suspended. Sige. Maybe we can just schedule her for tomorrow. Recognize our majority floor leader to lead the chamber in prayer.
Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Almighty God, the creator of heavens and the earth, we come before you humbling ourselves, knowing that without you, we can do nothing. But if you are with us, no one and nothing, no circumstances here on earth can be against us. Today, as we open our session, please be with us. Give us your treasury of wisdom from heaven, and let us be able to do our duties and responsibilities, not only for our people, but for your glory alone. We ask this in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen and amen.
Amen. Secretary, may please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos,
Present.
Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator
Present.
Villar Mark, the Senate President.
Tanong mo kung nadinig.
Yes, just to put on record, we heard the vote of the answer of Senator Villar, and Senator Escudero is online as well. Did Senator Amy Marcos answer? She answered, good. With 20 senators physically present and 4 senators virtually present, because they are recovering from COVID and are also exposed, for a total of 24 senators present, the chair declares the presence of the quorum. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we defer with the approval of the Journal of the 10th Session, Monday, August 15, 2022, at a later hour.
Is there any objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
If there is any objection to the motion, if there's none, Secretary, please proceed.
Resolutions. Resolution number 101, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the sufficiency of the Department of Energy's existing policies on minimum inventory requirement for oil and petroleum products, and the necessity of establishing a strategic petroleum reserve to ensure the security of the country's oil supply. Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to Committee on Energy.
102, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry on the Philippines' natural gas industry policy with the end in view of enacting a comprehensive natural gas regulatory framework towards energy security. Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committee on Energy.
103, urging the appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry on the implementation of RA 9290 and to propose amendments thereto with the end goal of reviving the footwear, leather goods, and tannery industries in the Philippines. Senator Poe.
Referred to Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
104, directing the appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the ballooning of the fiscal deficit in the past 2 years and to ascertain the sustainability of maintaining a high deficit and debt on the road to economic recovery. Senator Poe.
Referred to Committee on Economic Affairs.
105, urging the appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation and exploring all possible ways to provide assistance to Filipino bakeries, which have been battered by the rising cost of wheat, fuel, sugar, a historically weak peso, and reduced consumer demand. Senator Poe.
Referred to Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
106, honoring and commending the Metro Bank Foundation Outstanding Filipinos of 2022, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
107, directing the Senate Committee on Energy to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the persistent and recurring power outages and rotational blackouts in the different parts of the country and on the rising cost of electricity amid these power interruptions, Senator Tulfo.
Referred to Committee on Energy.
108, honoring and commending the awardees of the Metro Bank Foundation Outstanding Filipinos of 2022, Senator Binay.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
109, expressing profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate of the Philippines on the death of Evangeline Rose Hill Eigenman, veteran actress popularly known as Sherry Hill, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
110, resolution commending and congratulating the Philippine contingent to the 11th ASEAN Para Games held in Surakarta, Indonesia from July 30 to August 6, 2022 for a triumphant campaign and for delivering the country's best performance in the biennial regional games, Senator Estrada.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
111, reorganizing and recognizing and congratulating the Philippine team in the 11th ASEAN Para Games for their outstanding performance, Senator Villanueva.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
112, congratulating and commending the entire Philippine delegation on their outstanding performance for the 2022 ASEAN Para Games, otherwise known as the 11th ASEAN Para Games held from July 30 to August 6, 2022 in Surakarta, Indonesia, Senator Lapid.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
113, congratulating and commending the Philippine National Police Taekwondo team for winning the overall title in the Taekwondo event of the 2022 World Police and Fire Games held as July 22 to 31, 2022 in Rotterdam, Netherlands. Senator Lapid.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
114, urging the Senate to signify its commitment in support of the promulgation of a just transition framework in addressing labor and climate issues as adopted by various intergovernmental international bodies, Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
115, urging the Executive Department and the local government units to institutionalize the use of the Zero PH platforms and adopt the post-disaster shelter recovery policy framework and the Ready to Rebuild Disaster Rehabilitation and Recovery Planning Guide workbook as tools for developing climate action plans and building a disaster-resilient and equitable recovery from the impacts of climate change and disaster. Senator Legarda.
Referred to Committees on Science and Technology, Urban Planning, Housing, and Resettlement.
116, urging the national government to immediately disburse funds from the Philippines' fourth Disaster Risk Management Development Policy Loan with the World Bank for the aid, relief, resettlement, rehabilitation, livelihood, and development of communities adversely affected by the recent 7.0 magnitude earthquake in northern Luzon, and directing the appropriate Senate committee to immediately call the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council for a Senate briefing to assess the situation and determine the needs of the affected localities and the total budgetary requirements to address the calamity. Senator Legarda.
Referred to Committees on Economic Affairs, National Defense, and Finance.
117, congratulating and commending the Philippine National Women's Football Team for their victory in the recently concluded ASEAN Football Federation Women's Football Championship. Senator Legarda.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
118, congratulating and commending the Philippine Para Teams for making history by garnering the Philippines' biggest haul and winning fifth place overall in the 2022 ASEAN Para Games. Senator Cayetano P.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
119, commending and congratulating the young Filipino weightlifters for winning the 2022 Asian Youth and Junior Weightlifting Championships held in Tashkent, Uzbekistan on July 15 to 25, 2022, and recording the country's best finish yet in this regional sports event. Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
120, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged overpriced and outdated laptops procured by the Department of Education through the Department of Budget and Management Procurement Service, DBMPS, by Senator Pimentel III.
Referred to Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations. Do we continue? Do we continue with the additional reference of business, Majority Leader, or do you want to proceed with the speeches?
We can proceed with the additional reference of business,
Yes,
Mr.
please
President.
proceed, Secretary.
Additional reference of business. Message from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 1 August 2022, it adopted House Concurrent Resolution Number 2, concurrent resolution supporting the 2022 to 2028 medium-term fiscal framework of the national government, in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
Resolutions. Resolution of both Houses Number 1, A resolution of both houses of Congress to convene the 19th Congress as a constituent assembly and to propose amendments to certain restrictive economic provisions in the 87th Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, specifically on Article 12, 14, and 16 thereof, Senator Gatchalian.
Refer to Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes.
RBH 2, proposing amendments establishing a single ticket system in electing the President and Vice President of the Philippines, specifically on Section 4, Article 7 of the 87th Constitution by Senator Gatchalian.
Refer to Committees on Constitutional Amendments, Electoral Reforms, and People's Participation.
Proposed Senate Resolution Number 121, urging the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the missed economic opportunities of the information technology business process outsourcing industry if a long-term work-from-home policy is not employed. Senator Marcos.
Refer to Committees on Economic Affairs, Labor and Employment, Human Resource Development.
122, resolution calling for an investigation in aid of legislation the anomalous and erroneous way that the government service insurance system is implementing RA 7699, otherwise known as the Portability Law. Senator Pimentel III.
Refer to Committees on Government Corporations, Public Enterprises, Labor and Employment, Human Resource Development.
123, urging the Senate Committee on Public Services to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the three China-backed railway projects, namely the Subic-Clark Railway, PNR South Long Haul, and the Mindanao Railway, including the reported renegotiation of the loans with China, as well as the study of other possible sources of funding. Senator Poe.
Refer to Committees on Public Services and Economic Affairs.
124, urging the Senate Committee on Public Services to conduct an inquiry on the viability of extending the Libreng Sakay programs. Senator Poe.
Refer to Committee on Public Services.
125, urging the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry on the implementation of RA 11165 to propose amendments thereto and with the end goal of promoting work from home and hybrid work arrangements in the country by Senator Poe.
Refer to Committees on Labor and Employment, Human Resource Development.
126, directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry on the status of regulations by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and other relevant government agencies concerning cryptocurrencies and other digital currencies in the Philippines. Senator Villar M.
For the Committee on Banks and Financial Institutions.
128, directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry into the implementation of the programs and projects of the Unified Student Financial Assistance System for Tertiary Education, allegedly due to questionable releases of funds and lack of control mechanisms. Senator Ontiveros.
For the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations.
133, directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the proliferation of spam and phishing text messages in the country with the end view of protecting the consumer's right to privacy and security. Senator Gatchalian.
For the Committees on Public Services, Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
134, directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations to conduct an inquiry on the procurement by the Department of Education through the procurement service of the Department of Budget and Management of laptops for teachers for use in distance learning. Senator Cayetano, AP.
For the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigation.
136, commending and congratulating Carl James Martin for successfully defending his World Boxing Asia Super Bantamweight title. Senator Go.
For the Committee on Rules.
141, directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations to conduct an inquiry on the alleged lack of diligence on the Department of Budget and Management Procurement Service in procuring 1.386 billion worth of personal protective equipment by Senator Pimentel III.
For the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers.
142, directing the Senate Committee on Economic Affairs to conduct an inquiry on the implementation of RA 9295 and to propose amendments thereto in order to further boost our domestic shipbuilding industry. Senator Poe.
For the Committee on Economic Affairs.
143, urging the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry on possible policy interventions for the revitalization of our garments and textile industries in view of its potential as low-cost, labor-intensive industries which can provide employment in the countryside and contribute to national development. Senator Poe.
For the Committees on Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Labor, and Employment.
144, directing the Senate Committee on Urban Planning, Housing, and Resettlement to conduct an inquiry on the state of public financing for the housing sector and the necessity of establishing the Housing Bank of the Philippines in order to centralize the financing and banking functions and address the financing needs of the housing sector in the Philippines. Senator Tolentino.
For the Committees on Urban Planning, Housing, Government Corporations, and Public Enterprises.
145, directing the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations to conduct an inquiry on the status, purposes, and objectives of the Southeast Asia Collective Defense Treaty and state commitments and obligations pursuant to the treaty. Senator Tolentino.
For the Committee on Foreign Relations.
146, congratulating and commending the Philippine National Weightlifting Team on its outstanding performance in the 2022 Asian Youth and Junior Weightlifting Championships held last July 15 to 25, 2022 in Tashkent City, Uzbekistan. Senator Lapid.
For the Committee on Rules.
147, directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations to conduct an inquiry on the alleged undue payment given by the Land Transportation Office to the joint venture of Dermalog Identification System, Holy Family Printing Corp., Microgenesis, and Verzontal Builders. Senator Pimentel III.
For the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations.
148, establishing the Senate Legislative Institute for the continuing education, studies, research, and training programs for the members of the Senate, its officers and staff, and for other purposes. Senator Pimentel III.
For the Committees on Accounts and Finance.
149, directing the Senate Committee on Cultural Communities and Muslim Affairs to investigate the joint management agreement between the Clark Development Corporation, National Commission on the Indigenous Peoples, and the Tribong Aita entered into on December 6, 2007 concerning the development of the Clark Subzone. Senator Padilla.
For the Committees on Cultural Communities and Muslim Affairs. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the body, we take this privileged speech up, and I ask that we recognize, Mr. President, the distinguished lady from Pangasinan and Iloilo and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Grace Poe, to deliver her speech.
Our distinguished colleague from Panay, Quezon City, and Pangasinan, and the Republic of the Philippines is recognized. Senator Amazing Grace Poe.
Mr. President, ang trabahador ng Senado at ang charmer ng Pilipinas.
Thank you, sir.
Distinguished colleagues, I rise to speak on a matter of personal and collective privilege in order to open a discussion on the future of work, or more specifically, hybrid work. This is the emerging middle ground between working in an office and working remotely. Tulad ng COVID-19, maraming variants ng hybrid work ang lumitaw sa mga nakaraang taon. Some require a set number of days per week. Others provide a quota of days per year that an employee may spend working remotely. There are differences, too, on the role of the office in a hybrid setup. Some companies still allocate cubicles to which employees must routinely report. Other offices are only used for collaboration and coordination. But amidst these many variants, there's one common theme: flexibility. Within contractual limits, employees are given relative freedom to allocate their time and space on their own terms. Mr. President, hybrid work is not a radical, futuristic idea whose time is yet to come. It is an old friend knocking on our door once again. Consider this, my distinguished colleagues. In 1969, Neil Armstrong made a small step on the moon, and in 1983, we made a giant leap towards the modern internet. Almost exactly between those years, in 1976, the first book on remote work was published. The rise of the internet and the personal computer enabled the telework boom of the 1990s. While President Ramos was working on getting a dial tone in every province or countryside, nearly 7 million Americans were already working from home. By 2001, it reached 19 million. Technological advancements have made work even more mobile. It is now possible for an employee from Metro Manila to enjoy the shores of La Union while assisting their boss from the United States. That's what I call offshoring, Mr. President. Jokes aside, Mr. President, some experts believe that the office of the future is virtual, global, and portable. They foresee a future of workers wearing head-mounted displays to interact with digital avatars in virtual reality boardrooms. Mr. President, these innovations have not led to liberation from the tyranny of the cubicle. Bakit kaya ganoon, Ginoong Pangulo? Una sa lahat, Hindi naman lahat ng trabaho ay pwedeng gawin sa bahay. This reminds me of a joke I heard the other day. Sabi ni Mrs., bakit mo inuwi ang trabaho mo dito sa bahay? Sabi ni Mr., rush kasi ito, kailangan tapusin agad. Sabi ni Mrs., hay nako, ikaw lang ang embalsamador na work from home. Again, Mr. President, tourism cannot thrive without actual tourists. Farmers cannot harvest digital crops and construction workers cannot live on SimCity alone. Pangalawa, malawak pa rin ang ating digital divide. In 2018, the year before we enacted the telecommunicating law, our fixed broadband speed was 17.32 Mbps behind Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand. Our mobile download speed was second to the last in ASEAN. Because of these limitations, hindi pa rin plug and play and work from home sa ating ekonomiya. Pangatlo, malaki ang papel ng tiwala ng kumpanya sa empleyado. In the hyper-competitive corporate scene in Hong Kong, Japan, and South Korea, employees who leave the office early or bring home work are seen as inefficient. Employees from these countries immediately returned to the office when lockdowns were lifted. But bear in mind, those countries have an efficient transport system. Mr. President, the tug of war between working in an office and working remotely is playing out right before our eyes. It can be seen in the impasse between the Fiscal Incentives Review Board and PEZA-registered firms. Let's untangle this mess. Section 309 of the CREATE law states that projects or activities registered in an economic zone or free port must be exclusively conducted or operated within their geological boundaries. This includes businesses registered under the Philippine Economic Zone Authority or PEZA. However, these severe lockdowns made this provision unrealistic. As such, the implementing rules and regulations of the CREATE law allow the implementation of temporary measures to assist the recovery of these businesses. PEZA-registered information technologies companies were thus allowed to implement work from home. The FIRB recently issued Resolution Number 017-22, and under this resolution, all work from home must be terminated by September 2022. Further, the allowable ratio of employees working from home was reduced to 30%. Failure to allow these directives will result in adverse effects for their fiscal incentives. For their part, the affected IT BPOs have pointed out that working from home has not compromised their productivity, growth, or efficiency.
Tipid sa pamasahe, tipid sa pagkain, ligtas sa anumang sakit at nakikita at nakakasama ang pamilya kahit nagtatrabaho. Ilan lang yan sa mga benepisyo ng work from home setup sa loob ng 2 taong pandemya. Bago magpandemya, 700 hanggang 1,000 piso kada araw ang ginagastos ni Kian pag pumapasok sa pinagtatrabahuhang BPO.
Let's say the taxi would cost me 250 initially.
One way.
250. Yes, one way. Kung syempre balikan, so 500. So ganun na.
Plus pagkain mo.
Yes.
Pagkain
So
mo.
pagkain na, oh my God, pagkain. I work in the economic zone. So imagine na lang kung magkano yung mga pagkain doon. Pinakamababa is like 200 pesos.
Si Ian naman na taga Cebu, oras sa traffic at mataas na presyo ng gasolina ang issue sa pagbabalik sa on-site work. Bukod pa ito sa pangambang magka-COVID kahit bakunado na siya.
Kahit vaccinated ka, carrier ka pa rin eh. So, di natin alam, meron pa rin ilan dyan na hindi na-vaccinate. Sila yung maapektuhan mo. Parang ikaw pa yung naging source.
Ang teacher namang si Roslyn, tanggap na magbabalik eskwela na sila sa susunod na school year. Pero may agam-agam siya.
I believe na kapag bumalik tayo sa face-to-face, syempre, kailangan it's either magko-commute ako or magda-drive ako to my to school, to my workplace. So, syempre, panibagong expense, additional expense na naman po ulit yun. A part of me is excited to see my students again, but a part of me is also nervous na kaya ko pa ba or marunong pa ba ako magturo ng face-to-face inside the classroom.
Punto ng mga nag-work from home at asosasyon ng BPO workers na patunayang pwede at epektibo naman ang work from home setup. Ngayong pwede nang lumabas sa mga tao, sana nila ay huwag silang piliting bumalik agad-agad sa opisina.
Diba, pansin nyo, nagdagdag pa nga ng yung tax revenue natin ay nag-increase pa ng about 8% ng 2021 na halos lahat kami naka-work from home. So, ibig sabihin, sustainable siya. At bakit kailangan ipilit na pabalakin on-site yung mga BPO workers?
Some firms like Concentrix even decided to forgo their incentives in order to keep their work from home arrangements. Mr. President, the emerging consensus is that there is no best model when it comes to hybrid work. The best practice is to let businesses and their employees figure it out. The French call this laissez-faire. Sorry, hindi ako nag-French. But in Filipino, huwag sakalin. As chairperson of public services, I have seen firsthand how excessive meddling by bureaucrats can choke out innovation. The FIRB's heavy-handed policies appear to be headed in the same direction. There's a clear example where government is a problem, not the solution. Do we really want major international companies like Accenture, Amazon, Hewlett-Packard, IBM, JP Morgan Chase, and PayPal leave for our competitors in India or Vietnam? I don't think we should let this happen. Ginoong Pangulo, napakalaking ginhawa ang hybrid work at sa kalusugan at bulsa ng ating mga commuters. Yung mga nabanggit kong kumpanya ay nagbibigay ng mataas na sweldo o at least very competitive rates at nagbibigay ng trabaho. In the past year, the average citizen of Mega Manila spent a total of 188 hours stuck in traffic, probably longer when monsoon season turns our highways into floodways. He also spent 56,000 pesos for commuting expenses. This excludes the cost of food to ease his aching gut and cellular data to extend his patience. Wala pang inflation yan, Ginoong Pangulo. Ang kailangan ng mga commuter, Ginoong Pangulo, ay CPR at hindi lamang RT-PCR. In contrast, the work-from-home employee saved 4 hours daily. In the context of a 5-day work week, that's a total of 20 hours or almost an entire day. Isa pang pag-aaral nito lang simula ng taon ang nagsabi na nakatipid ng halos 340,000 pesos taon-taon ang bawat empleyadong Pilipino sa hybrid work setup nitong pandemya. Finally, working from home paid dividends in terms of physical, emotional, and mental health. 74.2 reported improved physical fitness, 35.7 had a more relaxed work environment, and 27.8 had more time to spend on personal relationships. Should we be surprised, therefore, that 6 out of 10 Filipino residents want to retain some form of hybrid work? Finally, Mr. President, a study published in the Philippine Review of Economics found that up to 1/3 of jobs in our nation's capital have telework potential. 1/3. Nationally, the same study found that up to 22 million workers have jobs that are partially teleworkable. Mr. President, it is clear that hybrid work is here to stay. Adopting is a no-brainer. It will improve our productivity and health, reduce our expenses, and make us more competitive. To get the ball rolling, I have filed proposed Senate Resolution number 125. It urges the appropriate Senate committee to review the implementation of Republic Act number 11165, otherwise known as the Telecommuting Act, with the end goal of promoting work from home and hybrid work arrangements in the country. Let's continue to close the digital divide by improving our internet access, starting by passing the Better Internet Bill, the Open Access in Data Transmission Act, and other similar measures. Finally, we should push back on agencies who refuse to think outside the cubicle. To conclude, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let's work together to turn work into something that we do, not something we need to go to. We work to live, not live to work and die. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. We have several colleagues of ours who wanted to interpolate the distinguished lady from Panay and the Pangasinan and Republic of the Philippines. But I also would like to put this representation's name after our two senior members who would like to interpolate, as this representation is the principal author and sponsor of a Telecommuting Act, or the Work from Home Law. First on the list, Mr. President, is the distinguished lady from City of Taguig and City of Pateros, no other than Senator Pia Cayetano. I move that she be recognized.
The lady senator from the city of Taguig and the municipality Pateros is recognized, Senator Pia Cayetano. Ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will move, no? I thought the lady from Iloilo and Pangasinan, tama ba? Iloilo and Pangasinan will stay here. So I'll move so that hindi siya kailangan tumalikod. Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of our colleague, I would like to not really propound questions, but maybe just share some information that I've been working on, some studies that I have. I'll proceed, Your Honors. Mr. President, I'm so excited. The title pa lang of the privilege speech, nagpapalpitate na ako at yung mga staff ko. Kasi the future of work, that is one of the categories that I had intended to prioritize in my committee, the Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation, and Futures Thinking. In fact, Your Honors, I'm happy to share that the Senate had initiated a budget, I think for almost 3 years already, for DAP, for Development Academy of the Philippines, wherein they provide courses for public employees. And my staff, my chief of staff and 3 others are about to conclude a course on in DAP. It's a certificate course on foresight and futures thinking. All of your staff, even you, I haven't taken the course, but I regularly attend online seminars, can take that course. And their thesis is actually on the futures of work. So I'll just share tidbits of that. I'm actually not as familiar as my staff, because they've been the one going to class for, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, something like that. Anyway, Your Honor, what I'd like to share is that when I saw the news about the issue on the back to work order, for the PEZA, these are particularly PEZA employees in PEZA registered companies. It was something that I was following intently on, because I am the author of the CREATE law. On the other hand, I have also chaired the Committee on Women and Family Relations, and obviously, like Her Honor, I am a women's and mothers and a wives advocate. So I saw with my own eyes, I experienced on my own the benefits of working from home. And what I'd like to spread into the record is that women are known to be the unpaid workers of society. I think I included this in my tribute to the late Prime Minister Abe, where he crafted the term womenomics and recognized the contribution of women. Now, it's a given, it's not an issue, but women are unpaid workers at home. They do not get paid for their contribution in the family's well-being. Wala silang work that is considered as part of the GNP, Your Honor. So now, with the work from home, many had that opportunity na they can now contribute in a way that is recognized by economic standards. So to be clear, yung trabaho nila na nag-aalaga ng pamilya nila, nagpapakain ng baby, nagbe-breastfeed, magluluto para sa asawa, maglalaba, those are still work. But till this day, they are considered unpaid work. But now, with work from home, they can actually be paid, they can actually be in the social security system, they can actually contribute and pay taxes, and so on and so forth. So, the one thing I like about work from home is it gives women this opportunity. The second thing is, Your Honor, is it also gives men an opportunity to be fathers or husbands who work from home. So we can go on and on about these benefits, and I join Her Honor in not just requesting that we review the implementation of the telecommuting law, but also have a hearing on that specific provision in the CREATE law, because I, being the author, doesn't mean that I will stand by it and say that it is not that we should not amend it. No, what I want to say is the future is in front of us, and I am so happy that Her Honor made it simple for us to see the timeline of the changes, and change is happening now as we speak. How do we define work? I really had a question, and I was discussing it with my team. Na why is it time that we redefine work and not be constrained by the physical boundaries that we created? Because the law that Her Honor pointed out really defined geographical boundaries. And there is a reason for that. Because when PEZA was created, the intention was to have specific benefits in that particular location. But even during the discussions in CREATE, and I can take this up at another time, clearly the intention was to incentivize work in various areas, regardless if it was in a PEZA zone or not. And to incentivize particular kinds of work, again, regardless if it is in a geographically defined area, such as PEZA or not. So why could that not happen in someone's home? So that's the first point I want to make. Her Honor can reply or not, but she's been nodding for the record. Her nodding will not be recorded unless I say that she's been nodding the whole time.
For the record, I agree.
So far that's what I wanted to point out, Your Honor, that I am open for that being revisited. Although that was in that bill, that law was tackled in the Committee on Ways and Means. I leave it up to the Committee on Rules to discuss with the various chairpersons if dun ba natin i-discuss yun. Pwede naman, pwede rin kasi labor. Like I said, it's a very strong issue for women. Pwede rin sa futures of work sa Committee on SDG. Basta I'm making myself available to discuss this. Now, second point I want to make, Her Honor mentioned the kind of savings that were felt, no, by the people who decided to work from home. She pointed out like yung natipid nila, no, sa restaurants. Tama ho ba yun, Your Honor? Sa restaurants. Did you mention anything else? Yung kain sa labas? Commuting, of course, yung travel, no?
Yeah.
Yung dalawang yon.
Parang they're saying about the transportation costs saved by a regular worker is about 520 pesos.
Yeah.
But that's both ways, but also that doesn't include food. But the average that I have here, and I can give you later on the source, is that they save about 340,000 pesos a year if they don't have
Leave
to
the home.
physically show up
Yes.
to work.
And I understand that because I think no one will argue that our transportation system is not that efficient, di ba? I have in my own home, when lockdown happened, my youngest daughter was still a football player in UP, so 3 of her teammates moved in to live with me, and they still live with me. But then since may back to practice na sila, nauna yung back to practice kaysa sa back to physical school, that's another argument that or discussion that my colleague here who chaired the Committee on Education, Basic Ed, and I have had discussions about na, wow, nagpa-practice na and I'm happy, they're practicing, I'm happy, magaling sila sa sports, pero yung face-to-face hindi pa na-achieve. Anyway, I live in Alabang, and these girls who live with me go to UP to train. And hindi ko naman sila kayang ihatid sundo, so I would ask them na, minsan na they would do angkas and like 250 pesos. These are students. You know, so and these girls had part-time jobs. They also coach. How much do they make as a coach? So, diba? So in so many ways, no, we can see how dati nung lockdown pa, nagko-coaching sila online. So, kain sa bahay ko, training online, walang gastos, walang transport, di ba? But now, lahat yon lalabas, and they have to eat when they're out, and so on and so forth. So I totally understand what Her Honor is saying. But interestingly, if we look at the picture overall, no, not just yung natipid sa commute, I don't think that's refutable because you stayed at home. Pero yung pagkain, may gastos pa rin yun, di ba? And let's be realistic, will they have time to cook at home? Maybe, again, if one of them is the stay-at-home parent. Now, when I say stay-at-home, they do the household work. But otherwise, they'll probably buy somewhere else. So nagmo-move lang naman yung sources of food and who is earning the income. So it's possible na matamaan yung business district kasi nagsara doon, hindi bumalik yung mga employees. Pero doon naman mag-boom yung mga maliliit na karinderya or easy-to-grab food near the residential area. So I just wanted to paint a balanced picture na they're still gonna eat. So maybe nag-boom yung palengke, maybe magbo-boom yung style, how do you call it ba? I think of it as a delicatessen, no? But yung parang luto na, yung karinderya, turo-turo, karinderya. So yun, nagsishift lang naman yun. Just saying na meron din naman sigurong ibang kumikita, which is good. And for the same reason, I don't have the article on me now, but you will recall that then Secretary Carl Chua of NEDA gave us a figure in one of the hearings. Ito, the economy will gain 12 billion pesos weekly from resuming in-person classes, benefiting transport and restaurant sectors, said Carl Chua. The closures mean 11 trillion pesos in future productivity losses. So, I use schools as an example, pero trabaho din naman yun ng iba doon, di ba? Yung pumapasok sa school, whether they're teachers or non-teaching personnel, affected lahat nung, I don't want to say underground economy, but some of them are not paying taxes. Informal, there you go. Informal economy that goes on there. So this privilege speech is so important. I think my last point, Your Honor, is to mention the digital nomads. I had the opportunity to chat with a foreigner who spent some time in Cebu. There's a big expat or foreign community there that works there. But he was telling me that the community in Chiang Mai is so much bigger. And all it really takes is, number one, great internet. Yeah. Great internet, and then the basics that support the life of a young person. So places to eat, entertainment, friends, places to stay. And they're digital nomads because they move around. So we're not even talking about work from home. They work from yung yung sinabi nyo, something about the shore cable.
La Union.
Yeah,
Offshore.
there you go, offshore. So parang ganyan ang nai-envision ko when I think of Siargao and La Union. My daughter's best friend spent how many months in Siargao and how many months in La Union. Her work had nothing to do with the beach nor the sunset. She's actually working for a startup, a techno startup company, but she's able to work that way. And how nice, no, that we have beaches. And so we're not even talking about work from home, we're talking about work from the beach, work from the beautiful beaches of the country. So I end my interpellation there. As I promised Her Honor, I'm not really gonna ask questions. I'm just gonna share my insights and with the idea of supporting that we further look into this, and specifically that provision in the CREATE law. I am very open to revisiting that, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, I appreciate the inputs of the good senator from Taguig because she's always very studious and she's always been passionate about the environment, sustainability, and all of this, I believe, will somehow also impact our surroundings, especially when we try to clip the amount of times we have to use cars to travel around. But yes, there's always a trade-off. It's a balancing act between supporting businesses that rely on those that go to work physically. But as the good senator from Taguig has mentioned, it's always a shift towards other businesses in remote areas that will benefit from a work-from-home setup. But again, our good senator from San Juan has a nice cuisine presentation that we can learn from to encourage tourism in the lounge. So
Which
it's
one,
like yan.
which one, Your Honors? There's two distinguished colleagues from San Juan.
The
cute
older
one or the
senator
cute?
from San
Okay.
Juan.
Mr. President, before I take my seat, can I just point out, because I want to ensure that my committee has relevance, I just want to point out the interrelated the Sustainable Development Goals that are covered by the privileged speech of Her Honor. So obviously, number one, which is no poverty. When women, and for that matter, families have work, we reduce poverty. Good health and well-being. Her Honor said that a lot of them had more time to take care of themselves, to take care of their bodies. And alam natin, it's documented that long travels, staying in the traffic so long causes so much stress. It affects their mental well-being. So SDG number 3 is on good health and well-being. SDG number 5 is gender equality. I won't say any more other than women are given more opportunity to work and attain their personal goals and their full potential if we are more flexible with work. So that's SDG number 5. Then SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. I really believe, I genuinely I'm a believer that given more flexibility, there will be more work available to our workforce. And that's SDG number 8. SDG number 10, reduce inequalities, basically for the same reason. SDG 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. When we decongest Metro Manila and other similar cities, we can then give more opportunity for growth in other cities and communities, and also allow their LGUs to plan it out better. Hindi katulad nung older cities like Metro Manila, where we're just dealing with what we were born with. SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. Marami din basura. Kung saan malalaki ang cities, dyan din pinakamaraming basura. And finally, partnerships, which is public and private partnerships. So on that note, thank you very much and congratulations, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, next in line is the distinguished lady from Antique, our beloved Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda.
Our distinguished lady senator from Antique, Senator Lauren Legarda, Senate President Pro Tempore, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to congratulate and associate myself with the distinguished senator from Pangasinan in the Philippines for the very relevant, timely, and much needed wake-up call for us to continue what was started way back when the pandemic hit us in 2020. I commend Senator Grace Poe for raising this matter before this August chamber. And in relation to this topic, Mr. President, and I just spoke with former Speaker Alan Cayetano, now our colleague, that the House of Representatives, under a subcommittee created then, had passed the Better Normal for the Workplace Communities and Public Spaces Act. I refiled this, Mr. President, as Senate Bill number 1119, which seeks to institutionalize universal and mandatory health and environmental standards in public spaces. The bill aims to protect the most vulnerable and ensure the health and safety of every Filipino while guaranteeing the economic well-being in all sectors and industries. Mr. President, I cannot agree more than, and in fact, I would like to associate myself with every aspect of life mentioned by the good sponsor, as well as the thoughts and policies that were propounded by the senator from Taguig as well, who is chair of the SDG committee. I believe, Mr. President, that the future of work, which allows work arrangements, whether you call it flexi-place, compressed work week, skeleton force, work shifting, flexi-time, or a combination of these schemes, has become a growing global movement. Employees will have their work hours reduced but won't suffer any loss in compensation. We also know, Mr. President, that reports show that flexible work policies create a more adaptable work environment and a highly adaptive team. And of course, encouraging our employees to work independently decreases the likelihood of burnout as well as contamination with COVID. So this flexible work environment should apply, Mr. President, as the good sponsor had mentioned, not just in the Senate, not just in selected government agencies, but more so in the private sector. And I will ask just a few clarificatory questions after I mention these things. So this flexible work environment has shown, as mentioned, to decrease stress, to boost levels of job satisfaction, and even help employees maintain healthier habits. Chronic stress is one of the most common health issues, especially during the 2-year pandemic, and can lead to physical consequences like hypertension, even heart problems, and could impact negatively on mental health. So my question that I would like to ask our good sponsor is, you mentioned and had an art card of several locators in PESA. Is my understanding correct, Your Honor, that these locators are leaving the Philippines or had left because of more flexible work arrangements in other countries, which our own PESA and perhaps other government institutions and the private sector as well do not encourage? I would just like to understand it correctly, and may I know whether we will be able to ask them to reconsider how much loss in terms of income or number of employees who will lose their jobs just because a government institution would have to ask their employees to return to work on face-to-face, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, as we know, because of the CREATE bill, as the good senator from Taguig said, that she's open to amending it, especially with this new normal that's presented. These companies are required to be located physically in a geographical area. Thus, even their employees need to be there physically. Now, only 30% of those employees are allowed to work remotely. Now, I've actually met with the officers of PayPal that are now relocated in a PESA zone, and what they're trying to ask the government is to reconsider that physical presence requirement, even in PESA zones, because admittedly there are some jobs that need to be done physically. You need to be there physically, like for example, manufacturing or agriculture that you need to really plant. But if you're doing, for example, customer service or IT support, or even processing things, you can do this remotely. And so PayPal is saying that although they will not probably immediately relocate their entire workforce, they are now being encouraged by what is being offered in other Asian countries like Vietnam, for example, and India in particular, giving them all these incentives that they don't have to be requiring their employees to be physically at work. Now, our advantage is that they really want to stay here. Because number one, I guess our workforce is really quite patient and charming, and like our Senate President, and who can speak, who are more comfortable speaking English. But when they weigh the benefits of maybe their tax incentives elsewhere, they're beginning to rethink this. So that's it, Mr. President. And what our chair now of Ways and Means, Senator Gatchalian, had a meeting earlier, and apparently the DOF is saying that there's nothing that can be done about it with the PESA law, which we need to amend. But what these locators can do is actually apply to the Board of Investments, or the BOI. And because the BOI is not geographical location specific, you can be anywhere and not in a PESA zone and still receive certain incentives. So this needs to be referred perhaps to my committee or whatever other committees to be able to thresh out exactly what we can do in the interim.
Very good, Mr. President. So it's possible that PEZA can reconsider, or the PEZA locators can reconsider the rules.
That it's possible for them to go around the regulation by going through the BOI instead of going to the PEZA zones.
Mr. President, as you mentioned, the future of work does not only encompass this flexible work arrangements, but this also would consider automation and digitalization. That's very important.
Yes,
And this is
Mr.
something that the Philippines is still struggling with. No? The growing digital divide will impact future generations and their ability to be part of our economic growth and prosperity. So how do we propose to address this? We may allow a work from home, work from the beach, work from anywhere actually where there is nothing wrong with enjoying the mountains or the seas, but be effective and efficient in your work. Yes, but if there is no internet, if our systems for technology innovation are not available, so how can we actually replicate the good practices that abound in our ASEAN neighbors and in other countries that you've mentioned, and in other developing countries who have, again, embraced new technologies ahead of us, Mr. President?
Yes, absolutely an issue, Mr. President. Internet speed, connectivity. You know, as recently, of course, this chamber and also the House, we passed the Public Service Act, which is now encouraging other players to invest in the country, particularly in telecommunications. Just recently, there is actually an improvement. There is actually progress in this endeavor of ours, that SpaceX, for example, the company of Elon Musk, that's like permit number 001 they were given. They will now be able to invest in satellites that will send the much needed signals to unserved and underserved areas so they can be connected. Because you can't always have a physical, what do you call this, cellular structure in those areas. So we are getting there little by little. I believe that our speed, from the time this has become an issue until the time the last administration, particularly the president of the last administration, called out the telecom companies, they stepped up their game a little bit, but not that much. So now the only way that will really push them to work harder is that if there's competition. So that's what we need to encourage. How do we encourage that? Fix our infrastructure, promote tourism, because if there are more digital nomads that will come here, others will take notice. In fact, in Indonesia, in Bali, they're recently launching a digital nomad visa. It's a specific visa to encourage these nomads to stay there. So it has a longer duration than a regular tourist, Mr. President.
Yeah, exactly. There was a side comment here of the chairman of the Committee on Finance, na iwanan na naman tayo, and we should not allow that. And I agree with Senator Angara, who mentioned that, and I'm glad that is the reason why we are commending the good sponsor for having raised this, so that the Senate can take the lead in having a partial or hybrid, if you call it, work from home without compromising efficiency and effectivity in the work that we do, and perhaps other government agencies as well. And the issue of locators in PEZA, I hope, Madam Chair, Mr. President, can be resolved as well. May I end this brief interpellation and commendation to your honor with a quote from Senate Bill 1119, Section 8, Paragraph A2, which was passed, Mr. President, in 2020, in the beginning of the pandemic, on third reading by the House of Representatives. Speaker Alan, Senator Alan, you will recall it was during your time and I was your deputy speaker, where you created a subcommittee that I chair, and I was conducting all hearings online, and this was passed on third reading. A Senate version was filed, and unfortunately, it was not enacted into law. But perhaps it would be good to take a second, third, fourth, fifth look at this better normal bill, which the House of Representatives passed 2 years ago. May I just read, which is so apt, this one-sentence provision: the overall strategy for the reporting of the workforce, which may be on rotational, staggered, telecommuting, remote, or work-from-home basis, including the relevant time specifications and periods, as well as a number of workers who shall be allowed ingress and egress. So as early as the beginning of the pandemic, we had addressed this, but perhaps with greater minds here, we can enhance this measure, and I am grateful to your honor for bringing this subject matter once again. So once again, I commend you. I would like to associate myself with your thoughts, with your views, and I hope that the better normal measure can be addressed, can be taken up in this chamber as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank our pro temp from the province of Antique for her support on this measure. As we've noticed, there are two women who have spoken out already, aside from me, who has delivered this privileged speech. And that's also because women are usually known to do a lot of balancing act, and working from home has given the opportunity for us to be able to spend time with our children, watch them grow, at the same time contribute to the income of the family, and be included in the computation of the GDP.
Maybe, Madam Chairperson, the men haven't stood up yet because they all want to leave the house. That's why it's supported by all the women of this chamber. Yes, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, the Majority Leader, Senator Villanueva, wishes to be recognized.
Yes, sir, Majority Floor Leader is recognized. Senator Villanueva.
I would like to put on record that I wanted to put an exemption to what the Senate President made mention. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, first of all, at the onset, let me congratulate the distinguished lady from Pangasinan and Iloilo and the Republic of the Philippines for bringing this up. This is very important, Mr. President. Indeed, there is a need for the state to be conscious and aware of the future of work. A portion of our workforce are working in jobs that did not exist 20 years ago. And while our children, 20 years later, will be working in jobs yet to be created. Our children will be working with machines and other inventions yet to be invented, and we need to be prepared for the inevitable future of work. And that's why I'd like to congratulate the distinguished lady, Senator Grace Poe, for taking the floor, because it is important to note, Mr. President, that the future of work will come with its own challenges, including potential displacement of workers due to automation. Based on a report published by McKinsey Global Institute in 2019, 18.2 million jobs in the Philippines could be automated, with the largest automatable jobs found in agriculture-related sectors at 6 million jobs. Other jobs with automatable work include retail, 3.4 million jobs, Mr. President, and manufacturing, 2.4 million jobs. And I'm sharing this, Mr. President, to the body because I think all of us are aware of what's happening in the workforce right now, and therefore there is indeed a need for additional working arrangements and for us to be sensitive with our workforce. For example, Mr. President, in Saudi Arabia, and I was sharing this a while ago with the distinguished lady, Senator Poe, that in Saudi Arabia, there's this robot named Sophia. Sophia, I'm showing it right now, Mr. President. She is the first ever humanoid robot to be granted a full Saudi Arabian citizenship. We were in Singapore last month, and Senator Nancy would attest to this. There's this robot in one of the malls in Singapore. Her name is Ella. is Singapore's first fully autonomous robot barista, and she can do Americano at the speed of 200 cups per hour. Now, in South Korea, Mr. President, South Korea has become the first country to impose robot taxes. Amazon has more than 520,000 Kiva robots and other robotic drive units in its warehouse. Now, Mr. President, I'm sharing this, Mr. President, because to show the importance of what the distinguished lady is trying to achieve here, the importance of us being prepared in the future of work. And in 19th Congress, I am very happy to report, Mr. President, as the lady from Pangasinan and Iloilo in the Republic of the Philippines, together with the distinguished lady from Taguig, Pateros, made mention about the intricacies or the complications that we are now getting the adverse effects of the CREATE law when it comes to work from home law. And that's why this representation actually filed this 19th Congress Senate Bill number 135, or the work from home in ecozone bills. This is to allow entities registered with investment promotion agencies such as PEZA to enter into voluntary work from home arrangements with their employees without losing their tax incentives. So my first question, if I may, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, would the distinguished lady, our distinguished friend, Senator Grace po, agree to this representation that we indeed need additional working arrangements to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution and to ensure that work will continue to grow in our country?
Mr. President, first I'd like to thank our majority leader from the great province of Bulacan for his presentation and also for his manifestation. Absolutely important that we don't just legislate for today, but we look towards tomorrow and be proactive. So the limitation that we have is not so much because we are hampered by the current laws, because we can always amend. It's also because of our limited exposure as to what's really out there. So it's incumbent upon ourselves to see what is going on around and where the trend is going, so that when we draft our laws, we are open to all of these other possibilities that are about to come. That's why it's also important that the provisions that we write are somehow open-ended to accommodate future advances that may benefit or that may come that will affect the labor sector. Mr. President, that's where the legal luminaries in this chamber can come in by making it by not limiting the possibilities of improvement because of the deficiency of the law. So I think, Mr. President, when we draft this law, we need to make it open-ended somehow to accommodate the development in the different industries.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as made mention by the distinguished lady, there's always room for improvement. And a while ago, I was listening attentively with the provision of CREATE law, wherein the PEZA actually agreed. Because at first, they were saying totally zero work from home, but somehow they came up with a compromise agreement that they will allow 30% to actually implement yung work from home, Mr. President, distinguished colleague. I remember having a kababayan in Bulacan, Mr. President, asking this representation to do something about it because, a lot of them would have to wake up very early in the morning just to brave the traffic and go to Manila, and naranasan na nila during the pandemic na naka-work from home sila. And that's why some of them actually thought of resigning from work kung ipipilit talaga. No? And some of them actually resigned, Mr. President. It's just that we feel that it is important, and that's why my next question is, kung nagawa nila yung 30%, Mr. President, bakit kaya hindi nila kayang gawing 50%, 80%, or 100%? I just wanted to get the thoughts of our distinguished colleague, Mr. President.
Mr. President, at the time of that hearing, what I understand is, first of all, we need to ask PEZA again why that's the case. But they offered an alternative, which is for these locators to actually register with the BOI instead. But honestly, I really don't know the answer to that. I think that we should really press a response from PEZA.
Yeah. Having said that, Mr. President, I would just like to associate myself with the statements made by the distinguished lady from Taguig Pateros na nasa bahay sila, gagastos din naman po sila. Bibili sila, mag-grab sila. In fact, ang tumaas nga po yung income nung Grab at saka yung mga Lazada, etc. Because buhay na buhay po sila, nandun sila, ginagamit pa rin po nila yung kinikita nila. Now, Mr. President, just moving forward, I have two other questions na lang po. How ready, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, how ready are our industries to shift to work from home? Would you agree that it is sustainable working arrangement in the long run, Mr. President, as this is also being practiced worldwide?
I believe, Mr. President, I have no doubt that this is something that will definitely benefit us more. As we've seen, I mean, it was thrust upon us when we had the COVID pandemic. We weren't exactly ready for it, but somehow we were able to manage. And we've improved greatly since then. I mean, now it's hard to imagine life without the option of working from home. I mean, even in the Senate, within a matter of weeks, we were able to manage with WebEx and pass laws that we didn't really realize we could have passed doing everything virtually. So I think that Filipinos and people are adaptable in ways that will not present a threat to us in the future.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I remember when we were discussing this measure, this telecommuting act, this representation conducted several hearings in the committee and debated and defended the bill here in this August chamber. And no one amongst us, Mr. President, actually thought that the pandemic is on its way. We were only talking about work-life balance. We were only talking about ADB reports saying that we are losing about 3 billion pesos in traffic every single day. And that's why I agree with the distinguished lady. In fact, let me also point out in the study conducted by Institute on Labor Studies, dated December 2021, 276 companies across different industries, Mr. President, were surveyed, including industries belonging to IT, BPM, transportation, logistics, manufacturing, retail, hotel, etc. It was found that the 276 companies, Mr. President, 181 or 66% reiterated readiness to telecommute. And moreover, Mr. President, 39% of the companies have an existing telecommuting policy, while 23% stated that they allocated resources for their work from home and telecommuting employees. Mr. President, one last point that I'd like to raise and ask the distinguished lady is that at this point in time, may we know, because as I was listening attentively to the privileged speech a while ago, the distinguished lady made mention about some companies who had forgone their incentives in PEZA enterprises because of the work from home issue. May we know if other than that company, are there any other industries that have forgone their incentives in PEZA enterprises because of the work from home issue, Mr. President?
Mr. President, the one that I'm certainly aware of is PayPal, which has actually been established here for years now. But because of the new normal, they were able to see the advantage of allowing their employees to work from home. But come September, that setup will no longer be allowed by PEZA, save for the 30% that will be allowed to work from home. So they haven't finalized their decision to leave the Philippines. Hopefully, with this new development, and now that they can probably work their way through the BOI, they might find a way to still stay with us. The path of least resistance is really to shift PEZA registered BPOs to the BOI. That way, they can avail of the investments without being forced to be in the echo zone. Another is to review the telecommunicating law in relation to Section 309 of CREATE and PEZA law. But the simplest solution is for the FIRB to look into the studies I mentioned and allow BPOs to do hybrid work. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. While I have some reservations that the only way or the only option for our investors is to go to BOI, I respect the position of FIRB, but I still feel, Mr. President, that the more options we have, the better. And let me also point out, Mr. President, in the telecommuting law that we passed, or the work from home law that we passed, Section 8 of RA 1165 states that telecommuting pilot program is they will establish and maintain a telecommuting pilot program which shall last for a period of not more than 3 years, and at the end of the program, the Department of Labor and Employment shall submit a report to Congress on its findings para po makita natin na yung pag-conduct nila ng baselining, scoping, and the profiling to find out which industries will actually fall on this particular working arrangements, Mr. President. Kasi binanggit nga kanina ng ating kasamahan dito sa Senado, hindi lahat ng industriya, hindi lahat ng trabaho pwede sa work from home. Kasi kung embalsamador ka, hindi talaga pwede ho yun, no? But there are other industries na can avail of this, and we feel na makikinabang po sila kung pupuntahan nila itong track na ito. And last but not the least, Mr. President, let me just put on record that this representation also filed several bills, not only the measure that I made mention a while ago, the work from home in eco zone bill, but also, Mr. President, SB 134, alternative working arrangements, SB 136, freelance workers protection, and we just passed recently together with Senator Angara yung RA 11927, which is the digital workforce competitiveness. Bottom line, Mr. President, is that we are here to serve the best interest of our people, and pag walang trabaho ang ating mga kababayan, lalo silang maghihirap. And if we are not sensitive with the what's going on around us, hindi tayo naghahanda dito sa fourth IR revolution, so lalong mahihirapan po tayo. Kaya again, let me take this opportunity to again thank our distinguished colleague, Senator Grace Po, for taking the cudgels in bringing this up, and more importantly, ensuring that there will be solutions to all these challenges that we are facing today. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished colleague.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the supposedly short but not short interpolation of the gentleman from Bulacan.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we recognize the distinguished gentleman from San Juan, Senator Jinggoy Estrada. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Yes, our distinguished Senator from San Juan, Senator Jinggoy Estrada is recognized.
May I ask the majority floor leader why he was the one who recognized me? I thought it was the deputy majority leader who was supposed to recognize me.
Because, Mr. President, the gentleman from Valenzuela was about to take the floor, and I wanted to make sure that we recognize the gentleman from San Juan because he was first on the list before the gentleman
Na hindi alam ng
Valenzuela.
isang gentleman
So I
from
just
San
wanted
Juan.
to make sure that I followed the list, Mr. President.
Yes.
No harm, intended.
I thought he
Mr. President.
did not want to recognize me, Mr. President.
That's impossible. You love each other.
Okay, anyway, Mr. President, may I be recognized again?
Yes, the distinguished gentleman from San Juan, Senator.
Thank you,
Jinggoy
Mr.
Estrada.
President. You can sit down because I do not have any questions. I just would like to have a brief manifestation. First of all, I would like to thank my comadre, Senator Grace Po, for tackling the issue of hybrid work in her privileged speech. As a staunch advocate of labor, employment, and human resources, I associate myself with her privileged speech. With our experience in our COVID pandemic response, where human intervention and human interaction activities were all restricted for safety and security concerns, the work-from-home setup has saved our industries in our nation in the continuance of work processes. And I am in favor of adopting hybrid work setup for types of work that can be accomplished remotely and virtually. I believe that this will open doors for more and better employment opportunities, especially for our women, seniors, and PWDs. And I also agree with all the advantages cited by Senator Grace and those mentioned by fellow advocates. We have to move with the demands of time and trend, and we have to adopt accordingly. For the record, I have filed Senate Bill number 44, entitled An Act Providing for a Working Time Flexibilization in the Private Sector, as among my priority legislations. This measure seeks to modify existing normal hours, including shortened meal breaks and overtime work. This will also complement the provisions stated in Republic Act 11165 or the Telecommuting Act, which provides for work from home arrangement with the use of telecommunications and computer technologies. And so I am thankful that we have supporters of the hybrid work setup as one imminent future of work for the Philippine labor industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jinggoy.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank the gentleman from San Juan, my neighbor, for his manifestation as the committee chair for the Committee on Labor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Bong Revilla would like to also make a manifestation, but he asked me that I move that his manifestation be inserted into the records.
Bless
So
his
noted.
heart.
Yeah. Mr. President, last but not the least is the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela. Di pa pala last, sorry. Second to the last, Mr. President. The gentleman from Valenzuela, I move that he be recognized, Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela, our robotics expert, Senator Wing Gatchalian is recognized.
It's a new technology, Mr. President, robotics and work from home. Mr. President, I will not ask any questions, but instead manifest my support to the privileged speech of the good gentle lady from Pangasinan, and I would like to associate myself also to her privileged speech. Definitely, Mr. President, that our laws have not kept up with technology as well as trends. And one thing that we learned from the pandemic is working from home using Zoom is possible. And in fact, we finished so many laws and addressed so many issues by working from home and using the hybrid setup here in the Senate. And this is precisely what I have observed during the onslaught of the pandemic. And earlier on during the hearing, Mr. President, I also brought this up to the Department of Finance because I also saw in the news that a lot of the BPOs, a lot of the transcription, offshore transcription companies are affected by the return to work order. And that order stemmed from the laws that were made in the past, which did not contemplate a work from home setup. I think the laws that were mentioned are the PESO law and also the CREATE law. So, Mr. President, what I propose is to revisit these laws, making sure that these laws are future-proof, making sure that these laws are attuned to the trends of working from home and also other modes of work. And this trend is this type of trend, Mr. President, is not limited to the BPOs. I'm also seeing some trends, for example, in Valenzuela, where I see micro BPOs, micro customer service setups. There are 5, 10 agents in a small room, but they're connected to a bigger BPO. And I remember asking the operator of this, and he said that they are allowed to work from home because it saves the company office space. It saves the company air conditioning, utilities, electricity, and it's a win-win solution or win-win situation for both the agent and also the company. So, Mr. President, again, I commend the good sponsor for bringing this out to the fore. And as a way forward is to look at our laws that prevent a work from home or a flexible work setup, because definitely we will see a lot of this in the next few years or even the next few months, no, as the world is adjusting to a post-pandemic setup. So again, I would like to associate myself to the privileged speech and thank the good sponsor for bringing this topic out to the plenary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank the gentleman from Valenzuela who's been very diligent and hardworking in his committee, now Ways and Means, which actually tackled this topic just earlier today. So it's quite relevant. And I'd like to highlight what he mentioned, the future-proof laws. And I think we should even make it future adaptable. And I think the important thing is really to harmonize our laws to make it future adaptable. Thank you for the gentleman from Valenzuela.
Mr. President, last but not the least is the distinguished lady from Akbayan, our Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros. I move that she be recognized.
To our Deputy Minority Floor Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros, recognized.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. Like the gentleman from Valenzuela, sa halip na mag-interpellate ng maikli, gagawin ko na lang kung mas maikling manifestation in the interest of time. But as an initial response dun sa importanteng privileged speech ng gentle lady from Pangasinan and Iloilo, recently, Mr. President, good gentlewoman, nagkaroon din po ako ng pagkakataong magkaroon ng dialogue meeting with industry leaders from the IT BPM sector. Isa sa pinaka-concerned at makikinabang dito sa advocacy ng good gentlewoman about the future of work, particularly yung hybrid at saka work from home work arrangements. Ilan sa pinag-usapan namin, unang-una, yung ilang emerging gaps in the knowledge base of IT BPM personnel. Maaring medium-term concern ito at mafo-focusan as we move towards a firmer commitment to hybrid work and work-from-home arrangements. So, hindi ko masyadong tatalakayin yon. The second point that we discussed has more to do with the good gentlewoman's privileged speech of today. Na interesante because the industry has also been having dialogues or seeking dialogues with the relevant government agencies and departments. Yung ilan binanggit na ng good gentlewoman, yung PEZA, andun din yung FIRB na ipinanganak ng CREATE Law, yung Bureau of Customs, Bureau of Internal Revenues, at yung Bureau of Investments, Board of Investments na highlight ng good gentlewoman. Of course, in the end, yung Department of Finance. So moving forward, pag dininig natin, we further work on the privileged speech of the good gentlewoman, it'll be interesting na ma-bring on board natin on the side of hybrid work and work from home arrangements. Kung hindi man lahat, karamihan nitong mga ahensyang ito. Pangatlo, Mr. President, the good gentlewoman also mentioned the country of India. Very interesting po talaga siya as we look for best practices models elsewhere in our region and the world dahil totoo po, India has set a work-from-home policy benchmark that could be one of the references for Philippine legislation. Posibleng sa mga specific na mga amyenda nila sa sarili nilang 2006 law governing their special economic zones, that it could turn out to be an exact policy template na pwedeng kapaki-pakinabang sa atin. And second to the last, Mr. President, good gentlewoman, I'm really glad to hear from the good gentlewoman today dahil malinaw na isa siya sa ating mga work from home policy champions. Meron na ring ilan tayong counterpart sa House of Representatives pero dito lang sa ating chamber, andun na nga po si Senator Gatchalian, si Senator Marcos, of course, the Majority Leader, Senator Villanueva, and also Senator Estrada. So tingin ko po dumadami yung mga work from home at hybrid work policy champions natin. That can only bode well para dun sa advocacies embodied in the good gentlewoman's privileged speech. And truly, last but not the least, Mr. President at good gentlewoman, I also hope na pag mas pinasukan pa natin yung laman ng privileged speech this afternoon, that we can certainly also bring into that discussion yung advocacy ng labor movement, yung kanilang good jobs agenda, dahil alam po ito ni Majo, 2-3 taon na nilang pinag-uusapan din yung kanilang perspectives about the Fourth Industrial Revolution at kung paano sila patuloy na makikinabang, yung pagprotekta sa kanilang mga karapatan at kagalingan, also in the future of work, kung saan matingkad yung work from home at saka yung hybrid work arrangements. So daghang salamat, Mr. President, at mabuhay at maraming salamat to the good gentlewoman.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank our colleague, the Deputy Minority Leader from Panay, for her short but very insightful manifestation and for understanding my situation and allowing that short manifestation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, and distinguished lady from Pangasinan and Iloilo. Just like to highlight again, Mr. President, the importance of work from home law. What we passed here in Congress is a law that would protect the interest and preserve the interest of our workforce. In fact, pag overtime po sila, kailangan silang bayaran ng overtime, and all the benefits na nakukuha ng mga nagre-report physically, yun din ang makukuha po nila. Kaya with that, Mr. President, I move that we refer the privileged speech of our distinguished colleague, the amazing Senator Grace Poe, to the Committee on Labor. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader? Chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move for 1 Senate minute suspension, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I was hoping you'd move for that.
Thank you, Mr.
Session
President.
suspended.
Thank you, Madam President. Pursuant, Madam President, to Section 20 of the Rules of the Senate as amended, Madam President, and with the adoption of resolution covering the amendments of certain sections in our rules, particularly Section 20, may I just manifest, Madam President, that Deputy Majority Leaders J.V. Ejercito and Mark Villar and Deputy Minority Leader Risa Ontiveros will now be regular members of our permanent committees. Just for the record, Madam President.
Thank you. So adopted.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, pursuant to Rule 10 of the Rules of the Senate as amended, I now move that we proceed with the nomination and election of chairperson and members of the Committee on Migrant Workers. I so move, Madam President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with the permission of the body, I move that we elect Senator Raffy Tulfo as chairperson of the Committee on Migrant Workers, together with the following senators: Senators Jinggoy Estrada and Christopher Bongo as vice chairperson, members Senator De La Rosa, Binay, Tolentino, Revilla Jr., Lapid, Angara, Padilla, Alan Peter Cayetano, and Senator Pia Cayetano. I so move, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I now move that we proceed with the nomination and election of chairperson and members of the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development. I so move, Madam President.
No objection. Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Madam President. With the permission of the body, I move that we elect Senator Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada as chairperson of the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development, together with the following senators: Senator Raffy Tulfo as vice chairperson, with members Senators Binay, Revilla Jr., De La Rosa, Po, Go, Cynthia Villar, Gatchalian, Padilla, Tolentino, and Lapid. I so move, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Madam President, thank you. I now move that we proceed with the nomination and election of chairperson and members of the Committee on Basic Education. I so move, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Madam President. With the permission of the body, I move that we elect Senator Win Gatchalian as chairperson of the Committee on Basic Education, together with the following senators: Senator Francis Escudero, vice chairperson. Members, Senators Angara, Binay, Pia Cayetano, De La Rosa, Jinggoy Estrada, Go, Marcos, Padilla, Po, and Tolentino. I so move, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I now move that we proceed with the nomination and election of chairperson and members of the Committee on Science and Technology. I so move, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam President. With the permission of the body, I move that we elect Senator Alan Peter Cayetano as chairperson of the Committee on Science and Technology, together with the following senators: Senator Pia Cayetano as vice chairperson, Senator Bongo, and Senator Robin Hood Padilla. I so move, Madam President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
I move for 1 minute suspension, Madam President.
Session is suspended.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, pursuant to Rule 10, Section 13, in relation to Section 18 of the Senate Rules, I now move that we proceed with the continuation of the organization of the various standing committees of the Senate by electing the chairperson. I so move, Madam President.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we elect the chairperson of the Committee on Culture and the Arts, no other than our Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda. I so move.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Madam President. Congratulations. Madam President, I move that we proceed with the additional reference of business.
Please proceed.
Thank you.
Second additional reference of business, bills on first reading. Senate number 501. Establishing the Disability Support Fund for the empowerment, full participation, and inclusion of persons with disabilities in society, and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, and Finance.
502, mandating all public and private medical institutions and hospitals to provide for motorcycle medical emergency first responders, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance.
503, digitizing all books necessary for public education and establishing the Philippine Online Library, providing funds therefore for other purposes, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education, Science and Tech, and Finance.
504, strengthening public health emergency preparedness in the Philippines, providing for a national public health emergency response plan, and mandating relief and recovery measures, appropriating funds therefore, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance.
505, institutionalizing a Philippine self-reliant defense posture program and promoting the development of a national defense industry pursuant thereto, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on National Defense and Security, Peace, Unification, Reconciliation, Ways and Means, and Finance.
506, providing for government financial institutions unified initiatives to distress enterprises for economic recovery, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Banks, Financial Institutions and Currencies, Government Corporations and Public Enterprises, Ways and Means, and Finance.
507, penalizing the imposition of a no permit, no exam policy or any such policy that prohibits students of post-secondary and higher education from taking their midterm or final examination or other similar assessments due to unpaid tuition and other school fees, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Higher Technical and Vocational Education and Basic Education.
508, creating the National Institute for Science and Mathematics Education Development, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Higher Technical and Vocational Education and Finance.
509, establishing a framework for citizens' participation in legislative policy making through the use of information and communications technology platforms, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation in Public Information and Mass Media.
510, recognizing the indigenous cultural communities and indigenous peoples, community to conserve territories and areas, establishing for the purpose the National ICCCA Registry and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Cultural Communities and Muslim Affairs and Finance.
511, establishing the Books for the Baris program and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committee on Basic Education, Local Government, and Finance.
512, an act to establish guidelines and incentives for the development of science and technology parks in the Philippines and for other purposes, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Science and Technology, Public Works, Ways and Means, and Finance.
513, an act to reconstruct and rehabilitate the existing 479-kilometer Philippine National Railways line from San Fernando, La Union to Legazpi City, Albay, providing funds from the annual value-added tax collections, amending for the purpose NIRC of 1997 as amended, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Public Services and Ways and Means.
514, reducing the cost of electricity for national government office by promoting the development and utilization of solar energy in all government buildings and offices, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Energy, Civil Service Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
515, an act to provide eating disorders awareness, prevention, and education among elementary, secondary, and college students, their parents and guardians, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education and Higher Technical and Vocational Education.
516, establishing the public schools of the future in technology and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education, Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation and Futures Thinking, and Finance.
517, declaring the marine, mangrove, foreshore areas, and water recharge areas of the Bantayan Group of Islands as a protected landscape and seascape, under the National Integrated Protected Area System as amended and providing for its management, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change and Finance.
An Act 518, an act declaring the Verde Island Passage in the provinces of Batangas, Marinduque, Occidental Mindoro, Oriental Mindoro, Romblon, and Quezon, a protected area with the category of protected seascape under the National Integrated Protected Area System to be referred to as the Verde Island Passage Protected Seascape, providing for its management, appropriating funds therefore, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change, Ways and Means, and Finance.
519, declaring a portion of the Philippine Rice situated within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippine Sea as a protected area with the category of Marine Resource Reserve under the NIPAS Act to be referred as the Philippine Rice Marine Resource Reserve, providing for its management, appropriating funds therefore, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change, Ways and Means, and Finance.
520, regulating the catching, sale, purchase, possession, transportation, importation, and exportation of all sharks, rays, and chimeras, or any part thereof in the country, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform, Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change.
521, establishing Philippine e-health system and services in support of universal health care, appropriating funds therefore, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Demography, Science and Technology, and Finance.
522, strengthening the regulatory system in the country to combat counterfeit pharmaceutical products, declaring the manufacture, importation, distribution, sale, or offer for sale or possession of counterfeit pharmaceutical products as an offense involving economic sabotage, providing for the prohibition of penalties for violations, and revising for the purpose RA 8203 by Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Demography, and Finance.
523, an act to conserve, protect, and sustainably manage peatlands and its resources and for other purposes, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change, and Finance.
524, penalizing the imposition of a no permit, no exam policy or any such policy that prohibits students of post-secondary and higher education from taking their midterm or final examinations or other similar assessments due to unpaid tuition and other school fees, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Higher, Technical, and Vocational Education, Basic Education.
525, granting the Magna Carta for daycare workers, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
526, providing stiffer penalties for theft, robbery, and destruction of public school property, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
527, mandating the inclusion of barangay officials within the coverage of the government service insurance system, amending for the purpose RA 8291 and for other purposes, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises, and Local Government.
528, an act to establish the Forest Cadastre, providing for its procedures and for other purposes, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change, and Finance.
529, an act to promote reforestation and to increase wood production through the establishment of tree growing, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change, Ways and Means.
530, requiring all national, regional, and provincial government hospitals to establish, operate, and maintain a dialysis ward or unit in the respective hospital and providing free dialysis treatment to indigent patients, Senator Villar C.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Demography, Social Justice, Welfare, Rural Development, and Finance.
531, encouraging youth sector participation in the agricultural sector, establishing for the purpose a Tulong Kabataan sa Agrikultura Program and a Tulong sa Kabataan sa Agrikultura Trust Fund, appropriating funds therefore for other purposes, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform, Youth, and Finance.
532, an act to further promote the adoption of rooftop solar technology among residential, commercial, industrial, and government end users, amending for the purpose RA 9513 and for other purposes, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Energy and Finance.
533, providing for the Magna Carta for barangay health workers, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Demography, Local Government, Ways and Means, and Finance.
534, promoting sustainable and alternative modes of transportation and other mobility options to improve air quality, increase efficiency, reduce congestion, and contribute to positive health impacts in our society, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation and Futures Thinking, Environment, Natural Resources and Climate Change, and Finance.
535, enabling banks to expand service delivery channels through cash agents and providing guidelines, therefore, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies, and Ways and Means.
536, an act to promote the growth and development of social enterprises as a means to alleviate poverty, establishing for the purpose poverty reduction through social entrepreneurship program, providing incentives and benefits, appropriating funds, and for other purposes, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development, Ways and Means, and Finance.
537, defining economic sabotage in computer-related offenses and amending RA 10175 by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committee on Science and Technology.
538, revising and strengthening the definition of the crime of rape, amending for the purpose Articles 266-A, 266-B, and 266-D, and repealing 266-C of Act Number 3815, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code, as amended for other purposes. Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
539, promoting the growth and development of the cable, television, and direct-to-home television industry and for other purposes. Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Public Services, Public Information and Mass Media, Ways and Means.
540, institutionalizing support mechanisms on matters of student discipline and classroom management for teachers and personnel in the public school system. Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education and Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
541, an act regulating class size and conditions in all public schools and appropriating funds, therefore, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education and Finance.
542, mandating the installation of gray water treatment systems facilities in buildings and imposing penalties for violations thereof, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committee on Public Works.
543, an act repealing Article 247 of the Revised Penal Code by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
544, strengthening national preparedness and response to public health emergencies by creating a Center for Disease Control, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance.
545, creating a rainwater harvesting facility for the management, maintenance, regulation, and utilization of rainwater runoff and improvement of ecological characteristics of catchments with the end in view of addressing flooding and water shortage in urban and rural centers, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committee on Public Works.
546, establishing an on-site, in-city, or near-city resettlement program for informal settler families in accordance with the People's Plan and mandating relocating local government units to provide other basic services and livelihood components in favor of the recipient local government unit, amending for the purpose RA 7279 as amended by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Urban Planning, Housing, Resettlement, Local Government, and Finance.
547, an act to further promote professionalism and information dissemination among public officials and employees by ensuring that they do not become source of misinformation, amending for this purpose pertinent provisions of RA 6713 by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation.
548, defining and prohibiting political dynasties, providing penalties therefore and for other purposes, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation, Constitutional Amendments, Revision of Codes.
549, improving the disclosure and transparency of the extractive industries by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change, Public Information, Mass Media, and Finance.
550, exempting donations and rewards for Olympic medalists and their coaches from taxes, amending for the purpose RA 10699 by Senator Cayetano P.
Referred to the Committees on Sports, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with the permission of the body, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 109. I so move.
Senate Resolution is considered.
Thank you, Madam President. May I request the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
Resolution expressing profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate of the Philippines on the death of Evangeline Rose Hill Eigenman, veteran actress popularly known as Sherry Hill.
Madam President, the status of the measure is that we are in the period of sponsorship. I ask that this representation be recognized to sponsor the resolution.
We recognize the Majority Leader, Senator Joel Villanueva.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it is my distinct honor and privilege to sponsor this resolution filed by our distinguished colleague, the distinguished gentleman from Cavite, Senator Bong Revilla. And just to put on record part of the resolution where it says the Senate has on numerous occasions recognized and honored distinguished Filipinos for their valuable contribution to and remarkable achievements in the respective fields and for their positive influence in the development of our society. Last August 7, 2022, Evangeline Rose Hill Eigenman, more popularly known as Sherry Hill, a seasoned and highly acclaimed Filipino film and television actress, passed away. For her unparalleled versatility and showmanship in numerous performances, especially in her antagonist roles, Hill earned the distinct recognition of being the La Primera Contravida in the Philippine entertainment industry. Madam President, the craftsmanship she showed in her illustrious career contributed immensely to the development of the Philippine entertainment industry. Her professionalism, passion, and dedication, together with her generosity to colleagues and commitment to excellence, all serve as inspiration and guiding light for the younger generation of artists and creative workers. The passing away of the seasoned and multi-awarded actress is a great loss, not only to her family, but to the entire nation as well. And so, Madam President, may I also ask that the sponsorship speech of our distinguished colleague, Senator Bong Revilla, be inserted also into the records, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Joel Villanueva. The chair would like to request that I be made co-author of the resolution. I may not have known actress Sherry Hill, but I admired her career from a long distance, and I have had the opportunity to speak with her, but very casually during her lifetime, and I express my admiration for her work. And I know that she is an environmentalist as well,
Yes.
and may have loved many parts of the Philippines, including parts of Mindanao, from what I read from online news. And so our heartfelt condolences to the Eigenman Hill families. We recognize and appreciate the resolution sponsored by Your Honor.
Thank you, Madam President. And at this juncture, may I also move that all members be made co-author of the resolution.
Yes, no interpellations are
Yes,
scheduled.
Madam
Therefore-
President, no member wishes to interpolate or propose amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 109, subject to style.
No objection, there being none. Senate Resolution 109 is hereby adopted.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with the permission of the body, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 113. I so move.
Please proceed. Senate Resolution 113. What is the title of the measure?
May I ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure, Madam President?
Thank you.
Resolution congratulating and commending the Philippine National Police Taekwondo team for winning the overall title in the Taekwondo event of the 2022 World Police and Fire Games held as July 22 to 31, 2022 in Rotterdam, Netherlands.
Yes, Madam President. The status of the measure is that we are in the period of sponsorship. May I ask that this representation be recognized to sponsor the resolution?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a resolution filed by our distinguished colleague from the great province of Pampanga, Senator Lito Lapid. And as part of the sponsorship speech, Madam President, may I quote some excerpts from the resolution that the Philippine Senate has on numerous occasions recognized and give commendation to outstanding Filipino athletes for bringing pride and honor to the country by winning in international sports events. This 170 PNP personnel went to the Netherlands to compete in a number of sports competitions, including taekwondo, volleyball, badminton, basketball, cycling, and track and field, among others. the 14-member PNP Taekwondo team from the PNP headquarters Camp Crame bagged the overall title in the Taekwondo competitions after winning 17 golds, 10 silvers, and 9 bronze medals. And so, Madam President, with the exemplary performance of the PNP Taekwondo team and the entire Philippine delegation deserves the highest praise, recognition, and commendation for bringing pride and inspiration to the Filipino people and for showing to the world the unrelenting spirit of Filipino sports excellence. And before ending my sponsorship speech, Madam President, let me also move that the sponsorship speech of Senator Lapid also be inserted into the records. I so move.
Thank you very much. And so the privilege speech and the resolution are inserted in the record and adopted if there are no interpellations.
Yes, before we do that, Madam President, may I also move that all members be made co-author of this measure. I so
We
move.
associate ourselves with the thoughts reflected in the resolution and the speech, and we acknowledge that all members of the Senate are made co-authors.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, no member wishes to interpolate or propose amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 113, subject to style.
Is there no objection? Hearing none, Senate Resolution 113 is hereby adopted.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, August 17, 2022.
The session is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam
very
President.
much for a very hard-working Senate.